The man no one was looking for. The true story of William Devin Howell. Part 1. A normal face in a forgotten place. Chapter 1. The Backyard Cemetery. In the summer of 2005, police officers in New Britain, Connecticut, followed a quiet man to a place no one had ever searched. It wasn't a forest. It wasn't an abandoned building. It wasn't a remote field. It was his backyard. Beneath a patch of grass behind a modest rental home, investigators uncovered human remains. Then more. Then more. 7 women, buried just feet from where neighbors parked their cars, watered plants, and walked their dogs. The man who lived there was calm, cooperative, almost relieved. His name was William Devin Howell, and for years, no one had been looking for him. Chapter 2. A life that looked ordinary. William Devin Howell did not stand out. He was born in 1970. He grew up in New Jersey. He worked construction jobs. He drifted from place to place. Friends described him as quiet, polite, socially awkward, emotionally distant. He didn't drink heavily. He didn't brag. He didn't threaten anyone. He was the kind of man people forget 5 minutes after meeting. That anonymity became his shield. Chapter 3. The Addiction Years. By his early 30s, Howell's life began to unravel. Not explosively, but quietly. He developed a serious drug addiction, especially to crack cocaine. Jobs became inconsistent. Money disappeared quickly. Relationships collapsed. To fund his addiction, Howell moved through a shadow world. Sex workers, drug houses, motels, transient communities. These were places where people vanished without headlines, and Howell noticed that. Chapter 4. Choosing the Invisible Victims. Howell did not hunt randomly. He chose women who were struggling with addiction, disconnected from family, living unstable lives, unlikely to be reported missing immediately. They were not faceless to him, but he knew they would be faceless to the system. This wasn't impulsive violence, it was predatory selection. Chapter 5. The First Kill. In 2003, Howell killed his first known victim. Her name was Evelyn Cologne. He met her through the local drug scene. He gained her trust. He offered shelter. Then he strangled her. After the murder, Howell did something chillingly simple. He buried her in his backyard. No panic, no elaborate disposal, no attempt to move, just dirt and silence. Chapter 6. Learning that no one was watching. Weeks passed. No police arrived. No neighbors noticed. No questions were asked. Howell learned a dangerous lesson. He could get away with it. So he did it again and again. Between 2003 and 2005, Howell murdered at least 7 women. All were strangled. All were buried behind his home. Some were stacked in shallow graves. He lived on top of them. He slept above them. He watched television while they decomposed beneath his feet. Chapter 7. A Killer Without a Mask. Unlike many serial killers, Howell did not cultivate a double life. There was no family persona to maintain, no career to protect, no image to defend. He didn't need a mask. He relied on something simpler: indifference. Indifference from society, indifference from systems, indifference toward the people he killed. That indifference protected him better than any disguise. Chapter 8. The Confession That Came Too Easily. Howell was not caught through brilliant detective work. He was caught because he talked. In 2005, while in custody on unrelated charges, Howell began speaking to police. At first, vaguely, then specifically, then in detail. He told them how many where, how. When detectives asked why he was confessing, Howell gave a simple answer: "I'm tired." There was no grand motive, no ideology, no dramatic explanation, just exhaustion. Chapter 9. Digging up the truth. Police followed Howell to his former residence. They dug. What they found stunned even seasoned investigators. 7 women, buried together, hidden in plain sight. Some had been missing for years. Some had families who had never stopped hoping. The backyard had been a graveyard all along. Chapter 10. The killer nobody remembered. As news broke, the public reaction was muted. No national obsession, no endless documentaries, no mythology. Howell didn't fit the narrative people expect. He wasn't charismatic. He wasn't theatrical. He wasn't taunting police. He was a man who killed because he could, and because no one was watching. Part 2. Arrest, confession, and the women the system ignored. Chapter 11. Arrested for something else. William Devin Howell was not arrested for murder. Not at first. In the summer of 2005, he was taken into custody on unrelated charges, minor offenses tied to drugs and parole violations. The arrest was routine, almost forgettable. Another addict drifting through the criminal justice system. No one suspected they were dealing with a serial killer. Howell sat in a holding cell like countless others before him. No resistance, no anger, no visible stress. To officers, he was just another tired man whose life had gone nowhere. That impression would soon collapse. Chapter 12. A confession without pressure. During questioning, Howell began talking. Not defensively, not nervously. He talked freely. At first, his statements were vague. He hinted at things he had done and people who were gone. Detectives assumed exaggeration or drug-fueled rambling. Then Howell said something that changed the room. "There are bodies buried in my backyard." The tone wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was matter of fact. Detectives stopped the interview and started over. This time, they listened carefully. Howell repeated himself. 7 women, buried behind his former residence, killed over a span of years. No threats, no bargaining, no attempt to minimize, just information. Chapter 13. Why he talked. Investigators would later struggle to understand why Howell confessed so easily. He wasn't facing life-threatening charges at the time. There was no immediate evidence linking him to murder. He could have stayed silent. But Howell explained it simply. "I couldn't carry it anymore." This wasn't guilt in the traditional sense. Psychologists later described it as psychological fatigue, the collapse of a man who had been living with death literally beneath his feet. The secrecy had stopped serving him, so he let it go. Chapter 14. Returning to the house. Police escorted Howell back to the property he once rented in New Britain, Connecticut. It looked ordinary. A small yard, uneven grass, a few trees. Nothing about it suggested what lay beneath. Neighbors watched from a distance as investigators began digging. The first body was found within hours, then another, and another. By the end of the excavation, 7 women had been recovered from shallow graves, some stacked, some overlapping, all deliberately hidden. Howell stood nearby, calm and cooperative. He pointed out locations, corrected mistakes, answered questions. There was no visible emotional response. Chapter 15. The Women. As investigators identified the victims, a disturbing pattern emerged. The women were struggling with addiction, living transient lives disconnected from stable housing, known to police only through minor arrests. Some had been reported missing late, some not at all. They were mothers, daughters, sisters. But in life, they had been invisible to the system. Howell knew this. He did not target them out of rage or hatred. He targeted them because he believed, correctly, that their disappearances would not trigger urgency. This was not impulsive violence. It was opportunistic predation. Chapter 16. A pattern of strangulation. Medical examiners confirmed that all 7 women had been strangled. There were no signs of torture, no excessive injuries, no theatrical violence. The killings were quiet, controlled, efficient. Howell did not seek spectacle. He sought silence. This method also left minimal forensic evidence, especially in an era before widespread DNA databases for missing adults. The bodies stayed hidden because no one knew where to look. Chapter 17. The system's blind spot. As details emerged, the case revealed an uncomfortable truth. The women Howell killed lived in a space society often ignores: addiction, poverty, unstable housing. Their disappearances didn't generate press conferences, didn't trigger task forces, didn't make headlines. Howell exploited that blind spot. He didn't need to be clever, he needed the system to stay indifferent. And it did. Chapter 18. Howell's emotional flatness. Throughout the investigation, Howell remained emotionally flat. He did not cry when shown photographs. He did not react to names. He did not express hatred. When asked how he felt about the women, he said, "I didn't think about them after." This was not sadism. It was emotional emptiness. Psychologists later described him as someone who had lost the ability, or the need, to emotionally register other people as fully human. Chapter 19. Families left behind. As the women were identified, families were notified. Some had searched for years. Some had given up hope. Some had never received answers. Now they were given truth, but no comfort. The shock wasn't just that their loved ones were dead. Part 3. Trial, sentencing, and a killer without excuses. Chapter 21. Preparing for trial. Once the remains were recovered and identified, the case against Howell became overwhelming. There was no need for elaborate forensic reconstruction, no reliance on circumstantial theories. Howell had confessed in detail, led police to the bodies, described methods, consistently shown knowledge only the killer could have. The question was no longer if he was guilty. The question became how the justice system would respond. Unlike many serial killers, Howell did not attempt to retract his confession. He did not claim coercion. He did not accuse police of manipulation. He accepted the process with quiet resignation. Chapter 22. The courtroom atmosphere. When the trial began in Connecticut, the courtroom was heavy with restrained emotion. There was no media circus, no spectacle, no dramatic entrances. Howell entered the room wearing standard prison clothing, thin and subdued. He avoided eye contact with the families. He rarely looked at the jury. He sat still, hands folded, expression neutral. Observers noted something unsettling. He did not appear nervous, not because he was confident, but because he had already accepted the outcome. Chapter 23. The prosecution's case. The prosecution focused on clarity, not drama. They presented Howell's recorded confessions, testimony from detectives, forensic evidence from the burial site, medical examiner reports confirming strangulation. They laid out the timeline methodically, how Howell met the women, how he isolated them, how he killed them, how he buried them. There was no attempt to portray him as a mythical monster. Instead, prosecutors emphasized something more disturbing. This was a man who killed quietly, repeatedly, and without excuse. Chapter 24. The absence of a defense narrative. The defense faced an unusual problem. There was no plausible alternative narrative. Howell did not claim innocence. He did not claim insanity. He did not blame drugs for loss of control. Defense attorneys focused narrowly on Howell's addiction, his unstable lifestyle, his mental health struggles. But even they did not deny intent. There was no argument that the killings were accidental, only an attempt to humanize a man who showed little interest in being understood. Chapter 25. Howell takes responsibility. In a rare moment, Howell addressed the court. His statement was short, measured, unemotional. He acknowledged the deaths. He apologized to the families. But observers noted something important. The apology lacked depth. It was not manipulative. It was not defiant. It was procedural, as if he understood that an apology was expected, not because he felt compelled by guilt, but because the process demanded it. Chapter 26. Psychological testimony. Expert witnesses testified about Howell's mental state. They described him as emotionally blunted, socially detached, lacking deep empathy, not psychotic, fully aware of his actions. He did not meet the criteria for insanity. He understood what he was doing, that it was wrong, that it would cause death, and he chose to do it anyway. This distinction was crucial. It removed any legal ambiguity. Chapter 27. The jury's verdict. The jury deliberated carefully, but not for long. The evidence was overwhelming. The confession was uncontested. The verdict was unanimous: guilty on all counts of murder. Howell showed no visible reaction, no collapse, no tears, no anger, just stillness. For the families, the verdict brought certainty, but not relief. Chapter 28. Sentencing. At sentencing, the court faced a grim reality. 7 lives had been taken, 7 families had been shattered, and the crimes spanned years. The judge addressed Howell directly. He spoke about the calculated nature of the murders, the vulnerability of the victims, the exploitation of systemic indifference. Then he delivered the sentence. Multiple consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Howell would never be free again. Chapter 29. A killer without excuses. In the aftermath of sentencing, psychologists and journalists alike noted what made Howell unusual. He did not seek notoriety. He did not explain his crimes through ideology. He did not claim compulsion beyond control. He offered no grand theory, no manifesto. Just a simple truth. He killed because he could, and because he believed no one would care. For years, that belief had been correct. Chapter 30. The quiet after the storm. After the trial, Howell disappeared into the prison system. No interviews, no letters to the press, no appeals built on innocence claims. He became what he had always been, unremarkable. The public moved on quickly, but the case left behind a lingering discomfort, not about the killer, but about the conditions that allowed him to operate unnoticed for so long.